Okay, now I have finished creating a finishing stitch all the way around both of my pattern pieces individually. This will help so that when I go to wash my fabric and dry it, the ends don't fray so much that the pants or shorts just fall apart. So my next step is going to be to sew my inner leg seams. So it says with right sides together. As you guys remember, my fabric doesn't have a right side and a wrong side, so I marked the wrong side with a big yellow X. So I'm going to fold it so that the right sides of my fabric are together. And I'm going to pin my inner leg seam. So the inner leg seam is going to be this piece right here. If you are making pants, this right here will go very, very, very long. It'll be the same exact steps. You'll just be sewing a lot longer. When I go to sew this, I'm only concerned about this inner leg seam lining up. I'm not concerned about this part right here, which is my crotch seam to line up, because right now one of these pieces is the front, one of these pieces is the back of my pants or shorts, and so they don't need to match up. So I'm just concerned about this seam right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pin it. Anytime you're sewing, you're going to have your pins face your cut edge or the edge where you're sewing. We pin to make sure that as we are sewing, things really stay in place very well. We don't want this moving, especially this top part of this seam. This is going to be in our crotch area, and so we don't want the pants to be off at all in that area. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew a 5/8 inch seam. That's a standard seam allowance. I'm going to line up the edge of my fabric on the 5/8 inch line. I'm going to start with my needle down very close to the edge so that way I don't have any space in between this seam. All right, so when I start, I'm going to start with my needle down very close to the edge of my fabric, top edge of my fabric, with the outer edge lined up on the 5/8 inch line. Again, like I mentioned, I don't want to sew over my pins, so whenever I can remove those pins so I don't sew over them, I want to. So I'm going to sew forward a couple stitches, and as we're always going to do from now on when we're sewing a straight stitch, is backstitch. This helps to create a knot in the end so that seam that you are creating never comes out. Before I get to my pin, I'm going to remove it and then continue sewing and removing the pins as we go. If you're doing the shorts, the inner leg seam kind of curves out a little bit, so you want to make sure that you are following that curve with your machine. So it kind of curves out just a little bit. Hard for you guys to see that with my arm in the way, but only way you can do it. When I get to the end, I'm going to sew all the way to the edge of the fabric, back stitch a couple stitches, and then I'm going to forward stitch off. Cut my loose threads, and then that is my inner leg seam sewn.